Good evening and welcome back to my channel. I am the Eclectic Explorer, and tonight, we will continue our reading in The Last Days, written by Nevill. We haven't gone into this book in quite some time, only because we were in the middle of moving and we've been in the middle of getting settled in. And as of the recording of this video, this is the 2nd of January, so Happy New Year to those that have entered 2024. I have set a new goal, and I hope you all are excited to this new year, as well as exciting books that we will be going through these next months to come. But without further ado, I hope you all have been excited and looking forward to listening to this book. We will go ahead and continue our reading in The Last Days. We will try to go for 2 hours, like the last video. Hopefully you all are enjoying it as much as I have been. West Hampstead, London, 12th of June, 2011, 1 p.m. By Sunday, the whole episode felt imagined. They'd pulled off a successful dawn raid and got out of the building with all the equipment intact. An animal had crept inside the Clarendon Roadhouse. A dog, a fox, a bird, pigeons. They were everywhere, and the smallest movements and sounds of an avian or animal intrusion were amplified enough to frighten them witless. Or maybe, like Dan said, a trespasser had followed them inside. But then why hadn't the gear been tampered with, or worse? He ruled out TV or radio because the house was detached and its windows were closed, but it reminded himself that darkness attuned any imagination to suggestion. It was natural, and unsurprising after Susan White's stories about visions and presences in a vast empty building. A couple of beers and the creak of floorboard were the only requirements to set them off. Though the fewer people who knew about the incident, the better. He was embarrassed now. He felt more secure after a day at home in his desperate studio flat. In his joggers, at work on the script, cigarette smoke permanently adrift from the gargoyle ashtray. Another cafetiere on his desk. Inside his little scruffy sanctuary, he'd gradually let his senses feel about and settle on the fusty anchors of his life. The ancient leather sofa that gave him backache, wall racks filled with hundreds of DVD spines, the stereo, the smoothie maker that had been a present, but was a dog with fleas to clean. Hundreds of books shelved as if by a monkey over 3 units. Black and white movie stills. The framed poster of Herzog's Acquired, The Wrath of God. The desk from IKEA that had been in the flat when he moved in, now cluttered with folders, were more books and DVDs. Not much to cling to. A worn-out retreat with a perpetually empty fridge. A vague smell of cat pee near the front door, 2 sash windows that never closed fully, and storage heaters that didn't work. He couldn't even read his own gas and electricity meters because they were sealed in the basement flat 2 floors down. Whose occupant he'd never seen. The flat appeared even more ramshackle than he remembered after the space and grace of the Holland Park townhouse. Same deal after an overnight in a hotel when you lived like a bum. But it was home, secure and real, and even if the previous night's experience left him uneasy enough to suffer a late night, followed by dreams he couldn't recall in the morning. As the new day's light filled the world, the edge to his fear had dimmed. Kyle removed the fourth flash drive from the back of his laptop. It was marked London, June 11th, Clarendon Road, penthouse interview. Susan White, aka Sister Isis. Some great footage was already visible in the first 4 drives. Susan White's interview segments all ascended to critical points when her agitation became visible. Usually close to the end of each segment, neat. Her scenes couldn't have been better if they'd used a well-rehearsed actor. She was for real. It all looked good too. The natural light dimmed as the day progressed, faded from a white sterility and vacancy in which Susan looked withered and reduced, to evolve into an amber hue at dusk, full of shadows as the walls came in around her. It was a marvel to see a story find its own pace and tone so quickly, and the eerie sounds he picked up in the boom mic provided the London section with a soundtrack it was never meant to have. He forced himself to wolf down a sandwich. He was getting lightheaded with euphoria. This could be something. Really something. He desperately wanted to discuss it with Dan, and the thought of the last of the raw footage from the previous night's shoot appearing on the screen of his laptop made him so nervous and excited he struggled to breathe normally as he fitted the 5th flash drive into the machine. He'd saved it until last. The money shoot. The camera mic was never used for anything save a guide track, but it was recording on their way down through the building to the basement, and then inside the basement too, when they were first spooked, as Dan had been using the camera as a torch. And there they were, him and Dan, on the unlit penthouse floor. The camera was on Dan's shoulders, set to a wide angle. On the laptop screen, the floor and walls of the house appeared in a narrow white beam of the camera spotlight. The light's power decreased at its extremity, then vanished into the murk. The shadowy field of vision appeared as if deep underwater, like they were filming inside a sunken wreck. Glimmers of fresh paint and the burnish of floorboards served as little reminders of the ordinary character of the flats during daylight hours, which was a fragile comfort at night. The small sphere of light washed the back panels of Kyle's leather jacket as he walked out front, and created a blue sheen on his jet hair. The world of the camera's eye bounced and shuddered. It threw weak, intrusive beams into the lightless vacancy of the stairwell, but never penetrated far, until the camera suddenly rushed forward and stared upwards at the ceiling. On the audio track, Kyle heard Dan shout, "Doofus! Why'd you stop?" "Shush! You shut the front door when we came back in?" "Yes, locked it." "Listen." Kyle paused the disc. He moved the footage back to the point before Dan slipped on the stairs, shuffled closer to the speakers, raised the volume. Something on the audio. Yes, just about. There was a faint clatter, a far-off sound, a series of knocks or slaps in the distance. 3 times he played it back and listened. Ambient, far off, but it could be anything. Ambient, sorry. He hit play, listening hard for anything unusual on the audio. Kyle detected their footsteps to and then into the basement. Their breath, the rustle of garments, but nothing untoward. They discussed the smell. The camera raked left and right, and nothing came into focus, until Dan zoomed onto the wall behind a jumble of broom and mop handles. Bingo! The camera's light hit a wall. The lens zoomed onto a yellow brown discoloration. Panned back to pick up the cloudy marks. At a glance, it was a stain left by the evaporation of unclean water. Kyle paused the disc, then jogged it back until he could see the widest angle shot of the stain. The discoloration suggested a second layer of thick branches raised from the wall, which shone like glassy striations, as if the sand inside the plaster had fused. It was not a water stain. He jogged the film forward, one frame at a time. The streaks blurred, but when they flickered into clarity, he sucked in his breath. He rewound the footage right back to Dan's discovery of the marks. He went through the clip again, and there it was. For 2 frames, what looked like a scrawny spine attenuated by ribs. He rewound, looked again, paused the footage. Yes, it could actually be a glazed impression of a curved vertebral column at the center of the stain, half concealed behind the glistening streaks, like a fossil of a skeletal spine, which would suggest a lighter surround offered a hint of meager flesh papered across the vertebrae, as if the bones were being glimpsed under grubby but mostly transparent skin. Above what looked like the shriveled remains of a pair of shoulders, long threads seemed to waft or sway like fine spun wisps. Out from what might have been a small skull, a head that dipped away from sight. Kyle made a note of the time code, then sat back and stared, mystified, bewildered, but also frightened. He swallowed, looked about his flat as if he expected to find someone stood beside him. He lit a cigarette, watched himself on screen talk about the children of the gathering, until he was interrupted by Dan's tense whisper. Rats. Faint, but still audible. A dull bang had been picked up by the microphone, as if someone had fallen against the door on the floor above. From behind the camera, Dan's voice went tight and urgent with fear. Someone is definitely here. You must have left the front door open. Intently enough to make his eyes smart, Kyle watched his recorded image leave the basement and searched the building with the camera running, until Dan lowered it to use the restroom on the first floor. The camera mic had picked up nothing besides the sounds of their voices and movements, and he felt a mild shame at how tight with fright his face had appeared, how jumpy his eyes were. Fingernails would have a belly laugh at their expense. The screen went black when Dan turned the camera off, before they moved up to Sister Catherine's former penthouse, at the top of the building. Smoking vigorously, Kyle waited for the next scene to start, and recalled that they hadn't set the lights up in the penthouse because they had been rushing through a rehearsal to see how it looked in night mode when they were interrupted. But they did line up the sound for the final penthouse segment, using 2 tie mics and the boom mic, so the playback of the audio as they fled the penthouse would be crystal clear. This was the moment of truth. How much of the disturbance had they caught? The next scene began. On screen, Kyle was filmed by Dan. He spoke to camera about Sister Catherine's separation from the adepts of the gathering, until the camera shook and skewed and left only half of Kyle's face in shot. As Dan said, "Dude, we have definitely got company." Kyle's scalp shrank under his hair at the faint sound of something that scraped above a hard floor out of shot. The sound progressed from the far reach of the hallway inside the penthouse. No mistake, the sound may have been faint, but that was a clearer shuffle of unsteady and unseen steps. The next image was of Kyle's pallid face on the screen. He could see his throat struggle to swallow the tightness in his trachea. "What is it?" Dan said, as he unfastened the camera from the tripod and lowered it onto the floor. And lowered it to the floor. The walls of the bare room shook in the spotlight until the camera settled to face the dark hollow of the doorway. Out of shot, the hurried exchange between him and Dan, their voices tight and breathless, was all too audible. How do I know? This is not funny. Just not funny. I'm not going to... In the murky enclosure of the on-screen world that only revealed the faint white flood of the camera spotlight across the floorboards, a door slammed in the distance, and with so much force the image flickered. Get out! Inert upon the floor, the camera vibrated as it captured the stampede of their feet and legs towards the door of the room, where they paused. Kyle's scuffed Converse looked gray at the farthest reach of the spotlight. Dan's black trainers clashed with the greenish tinge of his big, pale legs. He'd been wearing shorts, and the spotlight depilated the black hair from his skin. Their images stood together in the doorway, rigid with fear. The camera angle recorded them to the waist, but no further up. In the safety of his studio flat, Kyle listened hard for whatever it was they had heard in the supposedly vacant property. His own strained voice called out from the laptop speakers. Who's there? There was no answer. Only a cessation of the noise. He remembered looking to his right at that point. I peered into the unlit hallway from which another 3 unseen doorways were closed on 3 lightless rooms. But there it was. Distant shriek. Kyle paused the footage, jogged it back, played it again. A cry, like a bird or a whistle, sharp, abrupt. You hearing that? On the recording, he asked Dan if the sound had come from outside. Let's take off, Dan said, with difficulty, his voice wheezy with fright. The mics recorded Kyle's groan and Dan's cough. The smell. There was the stench then, billowing from the unlit confines of the top story. And again, on the audio track came a distant burst of whistles from the distance, like birds panicked from a hedgerow, and then Kyle jogged the film back, listened again to, what was it? Bestial. Sudden, throat deep, a wet rumble, with the beginning of a snarl inside it, and something else in response to the growl. What he had thought was a dog. Yes, it sounded like a frightened dog whistling through its muzzle. He played the footage back 3 times, listened again. Could a man make such a sound? Kyle hit play, and lurched away from the laptop, pushed himself back from the speakers that vibrated with the thump of feet, the footsteps of someone who staggered through the dark passage towards where he and Dan cowered. On screen, their legs jumped and then fled. They bumped into each other and fought in the doorway, then lurched for the staircase 2 abreast and went out of shot. The microphones caught the chaos of their route on the unlit staircase. Hands squealed on banister rails. Feet thudded wooden stairs. Breath was panted out as if by overheating machines. And then he and Dan were distant thuds on the audio track. But the camera continued to record the void of the unlit hallway, beyond the doorway of the room they had evacuated. A new series of sounds dispersed from the speakers. They reminded Kyle of a frantic slap of hands against a wall, as someone unsteady on their feet attempted to move quickly through the hallway. After them, a second door slammed on the same floor, as if yanked shut by the frantic hands. There were 2 intruders? Impossible! No! Hunched over on the floor of his flat, he stared at the laptop screen and didn't blink in case he missed what he really did not want to see. The picture on the screen remained unchanged for a few seconds, the camera stationary and shooting from ground level. The image in the viewfinder static. until a thin figure raced across the open doorway. On ungainly legs, uncoordinated by quick, it fitted for a moment before it too descended the staircase in pursuit, and as it appeared, the darkness of the doorway and the void beyond was filled with the scratch of the figure's feet, reminiscent of a dog's claws that skid and scratch upon a varnished surface. Kyle hit pause. Someone almost certainly unclothed had been in there with them the whole time. But how? They checked every room of the top story before they began the last scene, and closed all the doors behind them. This just wasn't possible. For a while he believed himself too unnerved to watch the clip again, but found himself slowly jogging the shuttle back until the smear of the pale shape reappeared on screen to rush across the doorway. He sat back and stared at the frozen image of an upright figure. Mid-stride in the dark, he moved the footage forward 2 frames. The figure was still vague, almost superimposed, but the camera focus marginally improved. Yes, there was a little more detail now. A pair of haggard legs beneath a shriveled groin, and the insinuation, more than the actuality, of wasted rear. Flesh bleached like a fish's belly. The knee bones were pinched, the calves stringy, the ankle and heels more bone than tissue, and the second foot, the one raised from the floor, was a blur. But there was a trace, an indication, that the second foot was long and pointed, if not spiky at its extremity, fleshless. Hal remembered to breathe out, nudged the jog forward, and watched the emaciated silhouette blur stoop and then drop out of sight, which implied the figure had fallen to all fours at what would have been the top of the staircase out of shot. He returned again to the last 3 frames, the only ones with the intimation of a face and profile. But the hallway was dim, and the figure was blurred because of its haste. Little was clear besides a trace of sharp features on the front of a hairless head. His legs cramped, but Kyle couldn't move as the footage played out. The figure had gone from the screen. The sounds of its descent, a scrape and grate at the wooden steps, suggested that 4 sets of long nails scrabbled for purchase. The microphones picked them up for a few unbearable seconds, but the noises of the figure's descent were obscured by a rush of wind through the building, the periphery of which even made the camera shudder. In the tail of the gust that must have been generated from the summit of the property came a final sound, the excited shriek of swine. That is the end of Chapter 4 in Last Days. Let me quickly check this really quick. Alright, so there's more to this unfolding, because this last time we weren't sure if this was an animal or if there was someone inside. We could not tell. But my thinking is that this might be a person that's been basically wasted and turned into an animal. How? I'm not 100% sure quite yet. There's still more mystery to this. But I want to see more. I want to know more, because it's getting more interesting. It's opening up more doors of curiosity. I'm very curious to see where this continues on. I hope you all are enjoying this book as much as I am. The last part I actually uh, got jumped out of my skin uh, reading it. It's now, if you're watching this right now, if the sound is too high or too low, please let me know and I'll see what I can do to adjust it. But if you're not watching it live, if you're watching it like just as is, please comment down below to let me know if the music that I have being played in the background is too low or too high. My guess it might be too low, but I want to hear from you guys first, so that way I know what to fix, and then I'll see about fixing it the best I can. So let's go ahead and continue reading Last Days, Chapter 5. West Hampstead, London, 12th of June, 2011, 4 p.m. Kyle called Dan, got his voicemail, tried to tell him about the Clarendon Road footage, but was cut off. He needed hours to recount what he had just seen, not seconds. Dan called back an hour later. He'd finished the christening, but had some last-minute work for Channel 4 News that evening about terrorism, and was at Heathrow. Couldn't talk. Would call him when he woke the following afternoon. Kyle called Fingermouse to tell him the first flash drives were coming across by courier, and that he wanted to separate DAT recording of the audio tracks in Clarendon Road. You'll hear why, mate. He paced the cluttered floor space of his flat. It didn't take him long to do a dozen circuits. Smoked Lucky Strikes until his mouth burned and what felt like his last remaining taste buds died. Was queasy with nerves and tiredness. Hadn't eaten properly. He checked the fridge again, but nothing besides an open packet of pasta parcels, 3 limp spring onions, and a pot of yogurt did anything but turn his stomach over. Books were picked up and put down. A Woody Allen film was started and stopped. Dishes were washed and even dried and put away. The cat was fed again, but didn't mind. The main window of his flat, overlooking Goldhurst Terrace, was peered through repeatedly. A bottle of wild turkey was uncapped. It made his stomach burn, but he felt better after 2 glasses. Outside, people came home from evenings out. The sexy girl from the haircut, like Trinity from The Matrix, announced herself on the pavement outside with the usual QQQ sound of her high-heeled boots. He went to the window and briefly and hotly looked for her. But even she couldn't take his mind off the footage. Hadn't that been a drug addict on the film? Wasted and lanky, hunting through the dark, all dignity gone, the voice shrill and cracked from emaciation and the privations of chronic addiction. Maybe they had gained access to the building, had concealed themselves among the city's wealthiest residents. In an empty building, must have done. The sound of his and Dan's voices had roused it from where it had been hiding in some near-fatal narcotic slumber. He'd once seen 2 skeletal female drug addicts in Camden before they cleaned the place up. 2 girls rummaging through bin bags outside one of the markets at 4 in the morning. There were upright bones inside clothes that had once worn to nightclubs. Their faces had been lumpy with purple boils. Or perhaps a former member of the cult had been drawn back to the house, harrowed and unable to break their attachment to the last gathering after 40 years. Kyle put a Volbeat album on the stereo to step to stop his head chatter, fell onto the sofa, stared at the ceiling, rewound his memory again through the dim horrors of the Clarendon Road footage. Thought of the terrible stain in the cellar. Fear coiled inside confusion. The flat was warm, but he shivered as if stationed before a persistent draught. Felt like he was about to accelerate vertically into a bad trip. One chilled by paranoia and tense with perceived danger. The cat joined him on the sofa, kneaded his chest and stomach with its front paws for a few minutes, but couldn't make Kyle's chest comfortable enough for sleep. The cat left him, tail high, and went into the tiny kitchen, and he heard it find the last of the weak sunlight on the windowsill. Kyle picked up the 8 pieces of uncollected mail he'd taken from the hallway of the Clarendon Road house on his way out that morning, and then began to Google the names of the former tenants. Mrs. Phillips. Rachel Phillips? Speaking. Who am I talking to? Kyle Freeman. You're at work on Sunday? Tough. I'm at work every day. Who are you? Oh, we don't know each other. You're not selling anything, are you? I'm in the middle of something. No, I was just, well, I have an interest in a property you rented at Clarendon Road. Oh, I see. Well, I understand you were the previous tenant of the ground floor flat, and how did you get this number? Oh, I Googled you. Googled me? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I must seem intrusive, and ordinarily, I wouldn't have bothered you, but, well, I was at the property on Saturday, and I'm not quite sure how to put this. I have a feeling you're going to ask me why I left the flat halfway through my lease. You did? Don't rent it. Don't go near it. I don't intend to. Wouldn't now, anyway. So the estate agent gave you my name so you could Google me. Google me? No. Glad to hear it. So how did you get my name then? Mail. But I didn't open it. I saw some mail this morning when we went back for and I decided to call one of the previous tenants. You were the only one I could find the number for. At your chambers, you're the only QC online called Rachel Phillips. I was calling to leave a message. My, you are tenacious. Well, it's quite important to me. And it's just that, well, I wondered if I noticed anything unusual about the property when I lived there. Exactly. Like, did you come across any funny smells? Smells? Ha! And the plumbers told me there was nothing wrong with the pipes. I say plumbers because I had 3 of them look. And the drainage is fine too. But the smells are the least of my worries, Mr. Freeman. Kyle Freeman. Mr. Freeman. She lowered her voice as if someone might have been listening at her end. Do you believe in ghosts? You know? I get asked that a lot. Perhaps I'd better come clean. I make films, man. I've made films and documentaries about unexplained phenomena. Sorry, I thought you were a prospective tenant. You should have said, I have no intention of going on the record about any of this. No. You don't have to. We had permission to go inside the house to shoot a documentary about its history. History? What history? It does have a bit of one. Look, I'm not a journalist, and I would never use your name for anything at all. I'm an independent documentary filmmaker, and I don't even want to film you, unless you wanted... Oh no. Sure, not a problem. But do you have time to talk now about the house? Not really. Could we meet then? I'm happy to spring for lunch. There was a pause. Ma'am? Yes. Hang on. Just look at my diary. Look, maybe it'll help to talk about this to someone other than my friends who think I'm mad whenever I mention it. Are you free Monday? I can be. At 1? It'll have to be tomorrow. I'm unavailable for the next 3 weeks. Sure. I can do that. And you'll have to come to me. I work off the Strand. Right. Great. Good. Meet me at the Star Inn, 1 sharp. I can give you 20 minutes. See you then, and bring my mail with you. Of course, he said in a dialing tone. Kyle exhaled, then gulped at the pint of tap water on his coffee table. He turned to his laptop and googled the name of the pub Rachel Phillips had mentioned, opened another window on his screen, and pasted the postcode into Google Maps. Looked for the nearest tube station. Chancery Lane. Maybe he could black cab and charge it to Max, who'd be pleased with this lead. Maybe he could try to persuade Rachel to let him record her testimony anonymously, then get an actress to do her narration and a voiceover if it was good enough. Rachel Phillips, QC, was abrupt and time precious. But as a barrister, she didn't fit the profile of a kook who was willing to jump to woo conclusions about odd sounds and smells in a rented flat. Didn't barristers have to be accurate? He was suddenly tempted to call Dan again and tell him the news about the interview. This unexpected confirmation of what they had actually experienced inside the building. He swept his phone off the table, but remembered Dan would be working and put the phone back down. Kyle slumped into the sofa, looked at the shroud of the chestnut tree beyond the living room windows, through which the dying sun came in, filtered as if through diamonds. This was really turning into something. He could feel it. That tingling, precious moment when the usual slog of the research, the hunt for interviews, the endless phone calls to set up a shoot, the standing around between takes, the fretting, the letdowns, the revisions and compromises, just seemed to elevate into a coming together, a serendipity when one lead opened into another, and he was transported, dizzy with excitement, by a project coming to life and taking a unique shape as it told its own story, a narrative he never expected to take form in the script. The best stories told themselves and turned the original promise into fossils. He knew that from experience with Blood Frenzy and Coven, they burned out because they were just waiting to be told if you found the right people and asked the right questions. Yowzer, he said to the cat that sat on the arm sofa. It blinked and turned on to its back. Still no word from Max. He'd left a garbled message on Max's mobile phone that morning. 2 more in the early afternoon when he'd been too antsy to sit still after watching the footage on the file's flash drive. Hadn't Max asked him to call right away, straight after the interview with Susan White? He opened his mail and began typing. Hey Max, sorry for the excess of enthusiasm, but we had an extraordinary experience Saturday night at Clarendon Road. My head is still reeling. Anyway, we'll tell you more in detail when we next speak. Panic over. We retrieved the cameras early this morning, with some trepidation, I might add, so Dan could meet his next engagement. Place was a different proposition in daylight. No evidence of anyone having been in there besides us at all. Just like it was when we were there with Susan White. Empty, bare, ordinary, totally innocuous. Electric lights were still out though, and we didn't have the bottle / time to check the stain in the basement. But you need to tell the landlord about it. It stinks down there. And if it's a stain, then the Vatican should know about it. Anyway, I've done some sleuthing after last night's fight, and now have an unexpected lead that I'll be pursuing tomorrow. Speak soon, Kyle. That is the end of chapter 5. in the book here. Give me some time to stretch. Whoa. So what are your guys' thoughts right now? If you guys haven't commented on here yet, I want to know your thoughts on what we've been reading. I want to know what you guys think about this book. I'm curious to see what this interview coming up is going to detail. Obviously, each witness is going to tell you a different story, or it's going to be the same thing, but with some additional stuff to it. Now, I'm going to assume some of these witnesses are different ages, and that this cult, whatever it is, has been around. It has been around for a long time, but it's still in existence, just underground. And this witness might be a key player in this. I want to know more about what's going on in this book. Because right now we're at chapter 6. It's chapter 6 in this book here. So we've gone over some decent amount of. We've gained some ground on this book, which is nice. Because we've got some ground to cover still, but it's not too bad. So. Yeah, we have 531 pages in this book. And right now we are almost at page 100. So in a couple of pages we're going to be past the 100 mark. So I'm looking forward to that. And like I said, we're going to try to shoot for a 2-hour video. So we're going to hit as many chapters as possible tonight. Now, I'm curious just to see right now how many chapters there are in this book. So I'm not trying to read the book, like I don't want to look at the end like what it says, but I do want to know what the last chapter is, and I get an idea how many chapters there are in this book. I'm going to assume this last chapter is going to be very lengthy. Sometimes they're pretty short, but this kind of book I'm going to assume is going to be very lengthy because it is the last chapter. So I'm still looking for that final chapter here. Now this author has another, there's a series out on Netflix that's based on one of his books. I don't remember which book it is, but it's, and I'm not sure what it's about either, but it's supposed to be, it's right now on Netflix as a series, if memory serves. How long was last? Oh, here we go. Okay, so there are 30 chapters in this book. And the last chapter is going to be very lengthy. But it's okay. We're going to hit this book hard and hit it good because we want to go over as many of these chapters as we can on a nightly basis for about 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours at best. But maximum would be 2 hours only because there's just so much to read and we just want to get as far in here as possible. If we can get, because right now I have a goal set for the year, and I believe, if memory serves, I have to go double check, but I believe I have 150, I think it's 150, it's 150 something, I want to say 155 pages, well not pages, books for me to read this year. Now, is it a challenge? Yes, it is going to be a challenge. Am I going to finish it in time? That's the goal. That is the ultimate plan. I've never gotten past, I want to say it was past 40. I don't remember. But this will be the biggest goal I've had in quite some time. So I'm looking forward to reading this book to you guys, some more of this book to you guys. And right now we're at the 45-minute mark, and we'll go ahead and continue reading Last Days, Chapter 6. Lincoln's Inn Fields, London, June 13th of June, 2011, at 1 p.m. Rachel peered at Kyle as he retrieved his screeching phone from the side pocket of his leather jacket. "Do you need to get that?" Kyle shook his head. "Nah, it can wait." It was the third call from Max since he'd sat down with Rachel Phillips on a bench in Lincoln's Inn Fields. One look through the window of the pub, and she'd quickly eschewed her own choice of eatery. "Don't worry," she said. "It's not I don't want to be seen with you, but I don't want anyone overhearing our conversation. I know too many people in there. I only have 20 minutes. I can eat later. You don't mind?" Quickly, concisely, breathlessly, as they walked to Lincoln's Inn Fields. Her eyes rarely left the screen of her BlackBerry, and Kyle understood this interview was going to be brief. "Hope you're not going to bill me for your time. I'm guessing you're expensive." She'd laughed. "Can be." Crisp white blouse and single strand of pearls. A single strand of pearls. Designer glasses with black frames. Charcoal pinstripe suit. Glossy white tights. Slaying backs. Perfumed maturely. She was plump but sexy, in that handsome way middle-aged blondes with pale skin can be. When she moved her hands, the red nails glinted like the shells of large ladybirds, and a thin golden chain glittered on a smooth freckled wrist. Kyle gave her DVD copies of his last two documentaries, hoping she would get past the lurid covers and watch them. See that he was serious and not crazy or exploitative, and could be trusted if she ever changed her mind about speaking to camera, or at least letting him use her dialogue. "Oh my, Coven, whatever next?" she said, then gave him a conciliatory look and said, "Thank you," while quickly pushing the discs inside her bag. "Not my choice of title, distributor," he offered by way of explanation. Kyle's phone cheaped as Max left another message. "And I thought I was busy," she said. "It's the executive producer of the film. He can't wait. I know your time is precious." "Thank you," she said, demurely, and stared out across the grass towards the cupolas and ramparts of St. Mary's University. The smell came first. That was the first thing I noticed. How would you describe it? Ghastly. A faint residue of sewage in the beginning, but then I became convinced there was a dead rat under the floorboards. Like carrion. Unmistakable. I spent some time with the UN in Bosnia, investigating war crimes, so I know what death smells like. She blinked her carefully shuttered eyes 3 times. But it would come and go. At night. It was never there when the letting agency sent tradesmen around during the day. They couldn't find anything. The plumbing was fine. Did they check the basement? Of course. Because that's where we found a leak, I think. A leak? Kyle nodded. Behind the boxes and the furniture, on the wall, the lights weren't working. The lights. Rachel bit the side of her bottom lip. Her manicured hands fidgeted for a moment beside her BlackBerry. Yes. When we went back at around 10 to finish up a couple of segments, we found the lights were out. So we were using the camera spotlight when Dan saw the stain on the basement wall. It wasn't a leak, she said, voice almost a whisper. She looked about to make sure no one was eavesdropping. No? Rachel shook her head. Am I right in saying that you saw a discoloration in the storage room? she said tersely. Her blue eyes narrowed in tandem with the interrog- interrogatory tone of her question. Yes. He stopped himself from finishing with Your Honor. And what did you see exactly on that wall? Kyle shrugged, still unsettled by the sudden directness of her inquiry. A stain, I think. A scorch mark. On the plaster. When I played it back, I saw, I don't know, bones or something. Rachel smiled in secret triumph. The stains on the plaster occurred in 2 of the rooms I rented. 3 months after the property had an extensive renovation, which included new plumbing, wiring throughout, and a complete redecoration in all 3 flats. I know because I made the letting agent show me the invoices. And there was no damp, there were no leaks, no rising moisture, nothing to have caused those marks. Well, it's just been done again. The place in show home, perfect inside. Doesn't surprise me. But what should surprise you is that parts of the property were also renovated twice when I lived there in just over 12 months. Were the other 2 flats still empty? Yes, they were. Rachel smiled again. The other tenants moved out before I did, for the same reasons. The odors, stains, that was only part of it. But on the subject of the lights, 2 electricians assured me that there was nothing wrong with the wiring, even though the lights going out throughout the entire building was not uncommon. I became quite adept at flicking the switch for the lights in the fuse box. That's all it usually took to start with. And about 100 spare bulbs. What was stripping the circuit? No one could tell me. But then the wiring under the fuse box was found damaged. Damaged? Rachel nodded. Vandalized. But by whom? Rachel nodded. Vandalized? But by whom? And the lights? Vandalized? But by whom? And the lights going out always preceded an appearance of the odd smells and the stains. You see, Kyle, I will wager that if you go back to the property today, the mark on the wall of the storage room will already be well on its way to disappearing, and it won't be near a pipe, so it's no leak. Any tradesman will confirm there is no damp, and an impression will be left behind. You can see things in them, but that still isn't the worst thing. It was always the sense that we had an intruder that unsettled me. I was there on my own most of the time, so it was the last thing a woman alone wants to feel. Unsafe. But I did. We heard something weird. Kyle tensed when Rachel turned to him abruptly. There was a fund manager and his wife on the top floor, and the owner of the airline on the first floor, who used the apartment when he was in town. We all heard things. Can you describe it? The sounds? I can try, but they were very hard to define. I thought, well, it's ridiculous. But I sometimes thought I heard children crying, in distress, and wind. Children in a wind. The man upstairs used to complain of dogs. The dogs were crying again, he would tell me in the morning. He was Iranian, but his English was good. There were animal sounds, or at least I hoped they were, but I'm not sure what kind of animals were making them. And always outside the flat, on the communal stairs, but the couple at the top were sure they were broken into. They had the police round 3 times in the middle of the night. Always sounded to me like someone was in the hall, though, or on the stairs. Footsteps, like they were drunk or something. Kyle stared at his feet. Music? Music? No, but something like whistling. I used to think. So it wasn't my imagination. We had quite a fight in there. Respect to you for sticking it out for so long. But we ran like a couple of kids. There was like this wind that blew down the middle of the stairwell. Kyle nodded. So what do you think it is? You're the expert. I wouldn't say expert. It's not likely anything I've heard of. Kind of like a poltergeist haunting, maybe. Carl swallowed. You never saw anything? Rachel shook her head. Oh no. But I can dine out on the story for the rest of my life as it is. She looked at him sharply. Amongst friends. So I don't want to find that you've used my name in your film. Because I will be looking. No, don't worry. We didn't dream of it. The neighbor kind of corroborated some of what you said anyway. Dan spoke to him on Sunday when we went back for the gear. And he said people were coming and going all the time. No one lived there for a very long time. Never had done. Place was always being gutted and fixed up again. Drove him nuts. He kept going on about the rubber skips, the hammering and scaffolding. Man, like that. I just like to use a little of the detail about the residents' experience at the property, but I won't ever mention your name. Good. So tell me the history. You said there was a history. Of course, the letting agent never mentioned it, but I've a hunch I'm not going to like what you were going to tell me. Was it haunted? We were there to begin shooting a documentary about the temple of the last days. Rachel Phillips looked as if she were about to suffer a stroke. The cult? In America? Kyle nodded. They started in that house, Rachel, when they were called the Last Gathering. They were there in 1968 and 1969. That is the end of chapter 6. This next chapter is only a few pages long, but I'm gonna take a moment and just stretch my back for a second here. Ow! Yeah. I'm hoping to go for 2 hours, but right now, the day's been starting to hit me. So yeah, what's your guys' thoughts on this? And what she's talking about? Because I'm curious about that smell too. Like, what kind of smell is it? My thinking, and this is a cult, I'm thinking there were sacrifices being made, and that's incense that they're smelling. But I can't confirm that I can't confirm it just yet. But I will say this right now, that my assumption is that that smell that everyone's smelling is incense and they're doing sacrifices. What? I don't know. And where it's gonna go, I don't know. But it lasted only a year at this place. But there's more to this. I know there's more to it. I want to know what else is there. What else is hiding in this place, this penthouse? And I think we're gonna get more, especially this interview coming up. I'm thinking this is gonna be the next. It's gonna be the next interview right here. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go ahead and read this next chapter. It's very short, very brief, and this will probably, I'm gonna probably call it, I'm probably gonna call it right now because I'm starting to get very sleepy. The music I thought was gonna keep me awake, but initially it did keep me awake, but I don't feel like I'm awake, like frightened or nervous kind of awake. I'm more like I'm awake, but I'm starting to relax to the music because it's more relaxing. It's not mysterious as it was originally. But let's go ahead and finish this chapter out, and then we'll go ahead and call it a night for right now. But this next part, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's called part. We're going to be going over this next part. So yeah, we've got past 1/5 of this book. I'm excited to see what's going to happen after this. So let's go ahead and finish this chapter 7, the last chapter for tonight. So chapter 7, West Hampstead, London, 13th of June, 2011, 2:45 p.m. Max, relax for once. I never told you to go and interview some bloody lawyer or the bloody neighbors. You've enough to get through without digressing. I hope I've not misplaced my confidence and my trust in you, Kyle. At the other end of the phone, Max's voice shook, and not just from anger. It sounded close to tears. Whoa, hold on. Your brief directly specifies that we are to research and film the evidence of paranormal phenomena arising from the belief system of the Temple of the Last Days. That's straight from your pitch, Max. Interviewing an ex-tenant of their original headquarters, who was directly affected by some uncanniness, is directly relevant to this film, and this bloody lawyer is a sight more credible than Sister Isis, by the way, who looks like a freak show. Don't be so unkind. That lady is as honest as this day is long. She was there. There, Kyle. The lawyer and her neighbors were not. Susan White would never embellish her story. Whatever she told you, you could take it to the bank. This was unfamiliar ground. He'd not encountered Max as anything but genial and unruffled, if not self-superior and covertly sly. But now he sensed instability. Someone irascible, and emotional, if not controlling, and he really did not care for it. Look, my work speaks for itself. I am thorough, Max. I follow leads. I do not overlook important testimony. Credible, believable testimony from reliable witnesses. Rachel Phillips is a barrister, Max. A barrister. How do you think this film is going to look with a load of old hippies in their 70s talking about presences in the 7? Eh? And playing to the gallery. Think about it. It'll look like a load of Dungeons and Dragons, mate. Please, do not raise your voice. You must try and understand. No, Max, I cannot. I cannot understand why you are bawling me out for taking some initiative here. This is not a good way to start a working relationship. I do not expect my decision to seek a corroborating story to be questioned. I told you that when we first met. You gave me creative autonomy. I will not be steered, Max, by an agenda. It's not how I work. I don't have an axe to grind here. Max. And I'm not going to grind one of yours either, particularly as you were a member, eh? There was a long silence from Max. But at the other end of the phone, Cal could hear the old man's tremulous breathing. No, Kyle, you're right. I apologize. I'm under a lot of pressure right now. Bear with me. His tone had softened through reconciliation to penitence, as if he were now surprised by, or unsure of, where his own outburst had originated. It seemed to have taken them both by surprise. Kyle remained cautious, instinctively wary of any meddling authority in filmmaking. God knew he'd had enough of that. Why did you not tell me that you were part of the last gathering? That's a major omission. You were balls deep from the beginning, mate, but you chose not to tell me. So what's that all about? Susan should not have mentioned that. I told her not to. Why? You left the group in the same week as her. You could have told us the same things as Susan. Maybe we should interview you. No. Kyle flinched as if he'd been electrocuted by the handset on his phone. Sorry. I am sorry. It's a difficult time for us right now. Us? Who is us? Max let a long, tired sigh. Another one of us went in the night. I don't follow, Max. What are you telling me? We can't waste any more time. It's paramount we get Gabriel's testimony this week. I need the London footage right away. Uploaded to the FTP site. You have the address? Yes, but wait, hang on. What do you mean? Another one of us went. We're old. There's not many of us left. Some of us are unwell. And a dear old friend of mine recently left us. You mean he died? Who? Doesn't matter. He was unwilling to break silence of the film. Would never have been involved, but I'm very upset about it. Sorry, Max. I heard yesterday. It's all very sad. We've all been through so much together. Max cleared his throat. Call me when you're in France. We can talk more then. We'll meet when you get back. Wait. Max had already hung up. Helter Skelter. Whatever you have read about the murders, this book will still shock you. Irvine Levine, about last days. Now that was the end of chapter 7 and entering this next part in the book here. Let me just double check. I think this is the part here. Yes. Yeah, this is the next part right here. So we'll go ahead and pause for right now because we have reached the next part in the book, in this book here. So, and right now we're at the 78-minute mark on our iPad here. Or, yeah. I don't have much to record on here. I don't have much use, but right now I'm just feeling it. And the music's not helping. Not this music anyway. I'll find another sound to this, but initially it did sound very mysterious and spooky. But it didn't really work out. It's like all the music, the mystery just kind of like dissipated. Like it's not nerve-wracking. It's more just like tiredness, and the rain is not much either. But yeah, I'm probably gonna call this one a night for right now. So hopefully we'll do 2 hours next week on this book, because like I said, we've got past our 100-page mark. We are now on the second part of this book, and I'm looking forward to reading more of this book. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I'll try to get this posted by tomorrow, but if not, then we'll see you all in the next video. Hopefully we'll be we are going to be doing another series tomorrow, and that will be the Lemony Snicket series. That's the goal to record tomorrow. So I hope you all I hope you all enjoyed this video. If so, please like and comment down below, like and subscribe to my channel, and please hit that bell icon when you subscribe, because you'll get notified on the next videos coming up. Because like I said, we are doing live videos. We're not recording as much anymore because I'm finding live videos are more convenient for me to record. Even though it may not give me the amount of people watching it, I'll still get that. I'll still get the footage, since this is the best way to do it right now. But anywho, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you all have a wonderful night. And like I said, I'm feeling it. So we'll see you all in the next video with our Lemony Snicket series. Hope you all have a wonderful evening. This is the Epileptic Explorer, signing out.